But today on the topic of scaling up by niching down, I'm going to teach by storytelling. And hopefully that I find that often sort of makes the content click the most for everybody when I give a talk like this. Also, I will say I am a collaborative speaker. I love questions from the audience. So feel free to use that chat. I've got that open on my screen. So if you have any questions, you can pop them over. Or if we have the raise hand feature on this Zoom, you can use that as well. And I can call on you so that we can address any questions that you have. As Jennifer explained, our 29 Design Studio is focused on food, beverage, and agriculture brands. And that was a focus that we went into 2 years ago. So in early 2020, we did that niching, and truthfully, I think it saved us from the pandemic, which allowed us to scale over the last 2 years. We've gone from, I want to say maybe we had 3 or 4 employees at that time in early 2020, and we now have 9. So not only did we grow and thrive during in general, but it happened during a pandemic. And I really think that niche that we went into for food, bev, and ag is the reason why. So, and I'll explain why we chose to niche, and maybe that will resonate with some of you if you're thinking about niching your work down into an area of products or a service that you provide. And hopefully that's helpful from that perspective. So I grew up on a dairy farm. So the agriculture part of our food, bev, and ag focus primarily comes from that. But I also married a chef, and I also found that economic development in the state of New York was really leaning toward the natural resources of upstate New York, which is heavy in agriculture and therefore food and bev. So the New York State Economic Development, in collaboration with some other more regional economic development agencies, partnered up to create the Grow New York competition. And we had a client in year 1 that was one of the 20 finalists from around the world. Applications were accepted from around the world. And one of our clients was one of the 20 finalists in that competition in year 1 in 2019. And I'm walking the floor of that show, and I saw another firm that had a booth saying that they were specialized in food and beverage. Now, I had been thinking about niching down into this industry for a while, and it was just one of those things that kind of, I saw someone else doing it and thought, why not us? Right. So that was one of the things that kind of started to tip the scales for me. You know, we've got a client in this $1 million competition. The grand prize is $1 million. Total of $3 million in prizes given away at the Grow New York competition every single year. They committed to 3 years. They're in year 4 right now, hoping to announce the opening of those applications soon. So that's sort of one thing that played into it, right? My background and experience that I had personally, that of, my surrounding experience, i.e. my husband, and also the folks that we were bringing on at the agency as well were also a factor. My current creative director, who was an art director at the time, came from another large agency where she worked on a lot of in-store grocery brands, as well as accounts like Starbucks. So we had a lot of experience in that regard. And then when it came down to the announcement of the finals, my client won the $1 million prize in that Grow New York competition in year 1. And so I called my team the next day, and I said, that's it, we're doing it. The potential for others to potentially surpass the direction that I had wanted to go in before we even stuck our flag in the ground was one of the things that said to me, I need to do this. And then again, with our client Real Eats Meals winning the $1 million too, I said, now, if there's ever a time, it's right now. So let that advice to you be that if you are considering niching down, let your passion and your experience drive that niche, because you'll find that in the clients that you work with, you have more of a focus in being able to tell your personal story and connect with someone in that way when you have more of a personal connection, either in the work that you've done before or personal experience that you can draw from on that. So we decided March 2020, we were going to announce the niching into food, beverage, and agriculture, and the pandemic hits. And we, of course, had some shifts that we had to make in that. Once that happened, and our trajectory that we thought we could go on was different, let's just say. So, but what I found after we had that niche focus was it made business development significantly easier, because instead of competing with other generalist firms that had all sorts of experience, they had larger teams, they had been in business longer, they had more experience to be able to pull from, but they were general firms. I now had something really unique for us that I could say, you are in the food, beverage, and agriculture industry, one of those. We are specifically focused in that, and here's some of the work that we've done in general, or some of the reason why we know a thing or two about this industry in general. And that was clutch. So it allowed us to actively go after the kind of client relationships that we wanted to get, that were in this industry, that the whole team was wildly passionate about. And we could now rise above with something that was different and unique about us. So again, drawing back to some of the things for you to take away in parallels of this story, let your passion and your expertise drive your niche. Another one being that you want to make sure that you understand very clearly what makes you different. So, and being able to articulate that. So for us to be able to say 29 Design Studio is focused in these industries and we can help you, you can apply that same concept to the sourcing of your ingredients if you're a food brand, or the way that you approach sustainability in agriculture if you're an agriculture firm, or the functional benefits and nutritional benefits of your beverage that are different from somebody else. So thinking about what is unique is also another reason that you can niche down into that focus and add value to the potential folks that you want to sell to or work with. When we niched down, we also very intentionally chose what I'll call 3 legs for our stool. So that's also a good lesson for you too, or a good kind of tidbit for you to think about. If you're thinking of niching down, you want to give your stool 3 legs. So if you say, I want to sell, I'm not going to try to make this a food analogy. I was going to, but in services, right? So for us, we didn't say we only want to work with agriculture because it was too narrow, right? So if you said, I only want to work with real estate companies, or I only want to sell my food product to boutique stores, or I only want my customer to be this. It's too narrow. And sometimes that can be difficult for the people that you're working with, for you to have enough traction in those markets, right? So when you're thinking about that, choose 3 related legs of that stool for you to niche down into and have that be your focus. So the other thing about niching and the way that you can do that too is you can niche into industry or into service. It doesn't have to be both. So for 29, we have this focus in food, bev, and ag, but aside from that, we're a full service firm. So we can take, any sort of marketing work, branding, strategy, that sort of thing. So we've chosen industry as opposed to niche. I spoke to a group last week that said, well, I don't really want to focus down into an industry. I want to do social media for everyone. And I said, that's enough, right? But you might want to be social media copywriting and, content creation, like photography, those being 3 related things, 3 legs of that stool, right? that are all related on the service side. I want to pause here and ask for any questions that the audience has, and also if we can take a minute to understand who is in the room so that for the rest of this conversation, Kristen, I know you obviously, but if everyone can take a minute to tell me what your interest is in niching or scaling, and then I can cater the rest of the discussion to your specific needs. Kristen, can you start us off? Introduce yourself.
I wasn't sure. Sorry. So I'm Kristen Nelson. My business is the Ardent Homesteader. It's primarily caramel sauce, but we do offer pork shares and sort of in that spread of things, even with the caramel. I am the maker, so I sell it direct from my website. I wholesale it to shops, and I do in-person events as well where I'm selling direct to consumer. So sort of all those, like you said, like one thing, I guess, so niche-ish, I guess.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you. Eileen?
Hi, my name's Eileen Kaliva, and my business is Kaliva Cookie Company. I specialize in my grandma's Italian cookies. My products are all natural, handmade in New York. I bake out of my house in Boston Lake. I'm a small, local, woman-owned business, and I ship my products nationwide, and I also, as part of Taste in New York, and sell at a couple retail stores.
Great, thank you. And Pat, do you want to add as well?
Yeah, I'm the beekeeper owner at Seaway Trail Honey, award-winning kosher certified seasonal and infused honeys. I do direct sales and some online and some wholesale, but I really need to branch out more into wholesale outside of the Rochester area.
Mm-hmm. Great. So that's really helpful for me to know who's in the room. Any specific questions that any of you have right now, you can feel free to speak up or put them in the chat and we can address them as we go. Otherwise, I can talk a little bit about sort of niching down into how you talk about your products and some of the concepts there. Before I go into that, any immediate questions? Okay. So for what all of you are doing, I think the way that you all explained it is great, right? And when you're going into these various retailers and you're continuing to sell your products, I think one of the most important things is, like I said, for how we're bringing on new clients to be able to say, we know this industry better than anybody else that you're going to find. You should be able to speak confidently about your product to a potential buyer, whether it's wholesale or a direct buyer at a small boutique shop or a large retail store, about what makes you different and unique. And so I think one of the things that sometimes becomes hard with that too is if you have relatively unrelated things like caramel and pork, right? You've got to find the way to knit those together that is still going to make sense and is still going to be like really focused, that potential buyer can understand the thread, right? The thread of connectivity of what you're selling. With cookies, I hope that you're doing a lot of storytelling in the way that you're approaching your retailers, and seeing you nod, Eileen, that's great. And then Pat, for your honey, do you have a sell sheet that you're using with these retailers to get more wholesale accounts?
I haven't reached out in a couple of years, so now I'm ready to do, I have the stores that sell wholesale right now. I sell wholesale too, but now I need to go out this spring but no, I don't have a sales sheet right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No problem. Yeah, we're all in different places. So when it comes to scaling your company and selling more of your products, right? Or selling different kinds of products, this is where that scaling up and niching down can come in handy. So sort of think about the way, like I'm, saying the way that you present your line of products to a potential retailer will help you sell more of it. So when you create a sell sheet, which can be, a simple one pager, I don't have one handy, a simple one pager about who you are, what your brand is, what makes you unique, all of those things. So that, and then all of the aspects of your products, your pricing, the volume that you want people to buy. Is it a case? How many is in a case pack, that sort of thing. But having all of that information at your fingertips and for the buyer will also help you be more successful. And this is where Jennifer and Amanda and their teams at Taste New York can also help you, guide you right into what do they need to put you on the shelves in the Taste New York stores. You can apply those same concepts to your retailers, right? So if you're thinking about here's a story about a mushroom brand that we work with. They're called Leap Foods. And when we first started working with them in 2020, they had 2 fresh products on the shelf. And so they wanted to continue to scale up. In fact, they had to make more revenue. And so they said, how can we do that? Well, they added another SKU to their product lineup. So another product into their lineup of what they were selling to add another fresh mushroom package. And then went to all of their existing retail relationships and said, I have another product for you. Are you interested in putting it on your shelf? Most of them said yes. And so now immediately they've gone from 2 products on the shelf to 3 products on the shelf. So when it comes to scaling, the work that you're doing or the products that you're selling, try to think about, is there another product that I could add to this that would allow me that's related, right? Still in that niche focus that you do, that would allow you to sell more to the same audience, right? But in a related product. So you've got the caramel sauce. Do you want to sell caramel covered waffle cones? Just as an example of something that's related. The other thing to think about with all of that too, of course, is what makes sense in your current production. So, you don't want to reinvent the wheel on what you have the capacity to create and sell, but something that would allow you to add another lineup to your mix is a good idea. I also like that rule of 3. I talked about the 3 related legs to your stool when it comes to niching down into industry. The same concept applies as the good rule of thumb for product flavors. So if the next time you go to the grocery store, walk down the pasta sauce aisle. And the philosophy of the creation of pasta sauce used to be, we're going to make the perfect pasta sauce that everybody wants to buy. And, we're going to continue to refine the recipe and update it again and again so that everyone buys this one pasta sauce. And then they started to realize that there's wildly different opinions on that. Some really like a smooth, some really like a meat-filled chunky kind of sauce. And they started to add different flavors to that family of pasta sauce. And now when you walk down that aisle, it's rows and rows and shelves of different kinds of sauce. So take that philosophy to your own business as well when it comes to that related line of products. And I like starting with 3 to give some various options. So I'm sure, Eileen, you make a number of different kinds of cookies, but when it comes to honey, do you want to try and explore some flavors? Do you want to look at a lavender honey or, some other kinds of infused honey that you could sell that would allow you to add different lineups so that you're not just, I sell this one product. Would you like to buy this one product from me? But when you have various options that you can take to these retail partners to say, I have a line of products. This one is my best selling, but I also have these new flavors that I'm introducing. Here are the options that you can choose from. So having those options for the retailer allows them to add something into their product mix that maybe they haven't before, or for the relationships that you have where you're already on a shelf in a particular retailer, can you add another SKU to that family so that you've got another shelf placement that can grow your sales, right, in that area? Any thoughts or questions on that, sort of growing your family of products?
It's actually,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, go Pat.
As far as, so I have a whole bunch of barcodes, and I have a lot of products. Should every product have a barcode when I'm going to sell wholesale? Some stores don't require it, but just when I'm reaching out, should I have, have a spreadsheet with all the different products and the barcodes?
Great question. Yes, every product should have its own unique barcode. Did that answer your question? She muted.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Kristen?
I was just going to say that it's funny. That's a question I've really struggled with since the beginning of my business, because I really, as far as, the caramel, it's one flavor,
Right.
and it's just me making it. And that's really how I want to keep it. So I've really always fought, this, mocha or coffee or, all different things. I mean, I know I could, but I just haven't taken that leap. So I have been trying to figure out some other things. When I do in-person events, I do baked goods with my caramel that I do sell.
Great.
But I have been trying to figure out some other thing that involves my caramel that I don't make. So whether it be a co-packer for like a caramel popcorn, and a recent granola collaboration gave me some different ideas too. I'm trying to figure out if that can be, something that happens every year. So then I'm just making, extra bulk caramel, not trying to fill, extra jars or a different flavor of a jar. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I definitely hear what you're saying. And it comes down to, I want to scale, right? So it comes down to your goals. So if your goal is I want to scale, then the question becomes, how can I do that with my current production capacity and capability that allows me to grow without adding too much effort on the other side? And what you said about collaborations is a perfect way to start. And you can kind of test some various avenues before going all in on a new thing, right? So if adding a mocha or a coffee or some other kind of caramel is going to drastically change the way that you produce the product, then that's a factor that can go into it. Whereas if you can collaborate with a popcorn company and there's a lot of ways that you could put that together, that the popcorn company can sell their product in collaboration with you and you can sell the same product, right? And you're both collaborating and sort of sticking to your areas of genius where you're just making the caramel and they're just making the popcorn, and you guys can collaborate in that way. So brand collaborations and crossovers in that way are an excellent way to grow your family of SKUs that benefits you and someone else. Certainly protect yourself in that scenario. I always recommend starting small. We didn't niche down into the three areas of focus that we did until I was absolutely certain that it was going to be beneficial, right? I was afraid we were going to lose all of our current clients that were out of those industries. And many of them stuck around. The ones that were still a fit and wanted to still, hang tight, did. And we still have a lot of clients that are out of industry. So I share that to say that I believe in nimble, especially we're talking small brands, right? We're talking about small runs. A lot of the time, you're doing them yourself. And so you don't want to go into a new collaboration with someone that's going to drastically change what you're doing now before you really know if it's going to work. So when it comes to those collaborations, is there a way that you can both approach it nimbly? And in terms of where to find those. You mentioned you've already got somebody you've been talking to about popcorn. You did it last year and it was great, which is awesome. But if you don't, so for all of the others on the call, if you don't have a current partner that you could potentially collaborate with, go to the Taste New York stores and see who else is on those shelves that you might be able to partner with, or to your local farmers market, where you can often talk directly to the business owner on the other side of the table to see, hey, I've got this product. I feel like it would pair really well with yours. Are you interested in doing a collaboration of some kind? Or a pop-up is another way to kind of really interestingly do that side of it. Other questions from anybody on adding in other products to your product family?
I just wanted to jump in and say on that topic of collaboration, I've seen that be very successful. A couple of our vendors, we have a coffee company that partnered with a dairy farm, and that dairy farm has bottling capabilities and a home distribution network. So that worked out really well as a collaboration. And we've seen in other areas too, like a honey producer partnering with a distillery so they can use the barrels. So I agree. I think that's a really great way to go about it if you don't have the capacity to add another product line in-house.
Yes, absolutely. The other thing about that, especially when you're testing something new, you want to try a new test batch of your product and you're not really sure what the consumer acceptance of that is going to be. Doing a pop-up, and there's lots of ways that you can do that. You can see if you can share a table with your local farmers market for a day, or if you can go to, if you are in a retail establishment, can you ask them if you can go in and do a sample for your new product for the day? But creating opportunities for you to talk directly to your customer are also great to get feedback when you're trying something new. Speaking of dairy, we're working with a dairy client to launch a new line of sort of related products to what they currently produce right now. And they're going to need that customer feedback. It's going to be a really important step in their scalability of it, to make sure before they start doing large runs that they've got feedback from their consumer that they like it. And I'll talk about the factors that affect buying decisions a little bit as well momentarily. But so we recommended they're in a number of retail stores, one of which is really interested in collaborating with them, the retailer, with this business owner. And so our goal is going to be to send them to that retailer so that they can set up a sampling station in the store. Remember when we used to do that before COVID, where you could go through a grocery store and taste test new products? That is starting to come back in some of the retailers, especially if you can do it safely and have prepackaged small versions of your product. And I know Kristen and I have talked about that a little bit, of how small does it get? How expensive is it? How do you sell it? All of that. But even if you're just masked up, gloved up, to do samplings in that way, you can still do that with COVID safety in mind. But finding opportunities to talk directly to your customer to get feedback on taste is wildly important. And again, essential for being able to scale up. And the other thing about that too, is when you've got John Smith standing on the other side of the table that is tasting your honey for the first time and says, "This is the best honey I've ever had," you say, "Stop," maybe a little bit more gracefully than that, right? But say, "I'd love to capture that comment. Can I have your name and where you're from so that you can collect that? You can post that on your website. You can put that on your sell sheet that you're going to share with a retailer, that John Smith that I ran into at this place, tasted my product and said it was the best honey he's ever had." You can put that on your social media to tout the taste. Creating consumer demand in that way, and helping people understand as best you can what your product tastes like, or that people like the taste of your product, is another great method when you're thinking about scaling up. And so I mentioned buying decisions. There's an international food there's a survey or a survey that this organization puts out every year. I'll send it to Jennifer after this event so that she can share it with all of you. They do this report on an annual basis, and it covers the buying decisions of a consumer, and it ranks them, right, of what is most important for somebody when they're buying something in the grocery store, all the way down, for 5 factors. And it goes, taste is number 1. It always has been, it always will be. That is what makes people want to buy a product and makes them want to re-buy a product, which is the most important thing. So if people are buying your product and they're not re-buying your product, you might want to look at doing some unbiased taste testing so that you can get some feedback from your customers about what they are liking best and maybe what's not resonating with them. It is also really hard for the business owner to do those because you're not unbiased, right? So when you're doing taste testing, as much as you can, get someone else to do it for you. And maybe, again, in the interest of collaborations, maybe there's an opportunity for even everyone on this call to cross collaborate, right? If there's a way that one of you can do a sample for taste test for, the other person, you can switch, right? And give honest feedback, because when the business owner is standing in front of you, it's really hard to say, hey, that's kind of not for me. And not be offended, for the business owner to not be offended, and nobody wants that, right? So to try and get neutral feedback about the taste of your product is wildly important. So taste is number 1. Number 2 is convenience. So how convenient is it for me to buy this, use this, store this, save it, all of those things. So convenience is the number 2 buying factor for consumers that they care about. Next is healthfulness. So how healthy for me is this? And then last is the mission or the sustainability or the earth impact. So still important. It's not, might be lowest on those lists, but I want to say the last time I checked those stats, it was 36 or 40% of consumers still care or do care about the sustainability and the earth impact that a product has, right? So some foods and beverages are have a better or a worse climate impact, right? So that's another factor that is still important. It is a rising trend too in what consumers care about. So I'll send that report around to Jennifer after the meeting so that she can share it with all of you and share it with the recap of this. There's a link to an online version of it. But hopefully that's a helpful concept for all of you when you're thinking about this, in what to tell a retailer as you're looking to scale your product line, to get either expanding your product line on a retailer shelf or get into a retailer for the first time. Start wholesaling for the first time, like you said, Pat, to sell your products and sell more of them. The way that you kind of approach and think about all of these things, the more you can use this data from this report that I'm saying, and then talk to your customer to get that feedback from them, share all of that information back with the retailer, tells the retailer, I'm interested in innovation. It says, I'm listening to my customer. It says, I'm paying attention to trends in the industry. All of those things are going to make the retailer more comfortable putting you on the shelf or giving you more shelf space for your product. Any other questions about that when it comes to scaling or anything else in particular? None? Okay. So most of this talk is often focused on industry specialization. I hope it was helpful to kind of shift that as much as I could into products and scaling up your product line and some of the capabilities that you can run into there. As I said, I know that the original discussion for today was supposed to be on packaging. So who has questions on packaging that I can answer in our final 15 minutes? I know you do, Kristen. Go ahead.
I wanted to see if anybody else did, because I knew that was off the table today, so I wasn't expecting it to come up.
No,
so I'll ask a simple question then, I think it's a non-visual question. What do you think about QR codes on labels, as far as, to sort of alleviate some of the, like, oh, this is also good for XYZ, and you can find our recipes here, and here's a website. Do you, because I for a long time I was thinking like QR codes, oh, they're so like corporate and too impersonal, but I feel like maybe that's shifting. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And actually, I did this packaging audit that we were supposed to do today a couple weeks ago, and I got the same exact question. So you're not the only one that's thinking about that. QR codes on packaging, I am pro QR code on your packaging. I think what is most important is what are you going to give to your customer with that QR code? So if it's scan here to get recipes, great. If it's scan here to read more of our story, great. If it's scan here to get to our website, which is www.abccompany.com, don't do that, right? So I think just make sure that whatever you're putting on the other side of the QR code is going to add value to that audience, right? In a way that they can't get to more simply. And usually, your web address is straightforward enough. For most people, your web address is straightforward enough that they can just type it in. So just make sure that you're giving them a lot of value for their effort, right, of taking out their phone and scanning the QR code on the side.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Eileen or Pat, any questions from you about packaging specifically that I can answer?
I have a question. What do you recommend we put on their packaging? Something that, that customers will look at and want to buy it. Like my packaging, I have, women-owned business. I have my website. So people can go to my website and buy them there as well. So any other suggestions I should put on my packaging?
Yeah. So some of that is going to come down. It's a great question, by the way. And some of that is going to come down to what we just talked about with that niche, right? Of what makes you unique. So if the fact that I don't think it hurts to put that you're women owned, but I think thinking really deeply about what makes your line of cookies super unique, that's the thing that you want to put on your packaging and make sure that that's clear. And then in terms of all of the things that trickle down from that, think about that hierarchy that I just mentioned with taste and convenience and healthy. And, not everything is going to be healthy, but if it's that your ingredients are locally sourced or that they're sustainably purchased or, whatever it is, think about what is going to be most important for your customer. Do your best to think about those things, and that's what to prioritize on your packaging. The other sort of 10,000 foot thing, and I gave this feedback to Kristen when she and I talked a couple weeks ago as well. One of the best things that you can think about when you're thinking about your packaging is high contrast. So in terms of what's going to catch the customer's eye on the shelf amidst a sea of a number of other products, if you can try to be high contrast, that's one of the most impactful things that you can do. You want to share what you've done, Kristen? I just saw you ran to get your packaging.
I was just going to say, I can show you I haven't done the new label yet, but I can show you the perfect example of what you're talking about and what we talked about. So this is my mini jar. Let me see if I take that off, if that would help. So my mini jar, it very clearly says what it is. My bigger jars, I have this, there's a photo in the background that, is very meaningful when I first created it, but, side by side, it's really easy to see what this one is.
Yeah.
So I am going to be shifting my other sizes to be more in this style and design. So that was great feedback, Maureen, from when we spoke.
Great. Yeah. Nice application too. Does that help, Eileen? Anything else I can answer for you?
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Great. Any other questions, Pat, or second questions from anybody else about packaging? I think the other thing, go ahead, Pat.
Hang tags.
Hang tags.
What's your opinion on hang tags?
On the package or on the shelf?
On like the jar.
Yeah. So I'm not against them. I think that anything that continues to help you tell your story is good. What you'll find, again, in the interest of scaling, that being the topic of today's conversation, hang tags take another step, right, to add to the package. So just as you scale, like I said, I realized that you're probably producing your product yourself, you're probably packaging your product yourself. So that hang tag is one more step that you're taking before you can get the product on the shelf. You will eventually get to a point where can I still do this? Or do I really need to take one step out? I talked to a chocolate company a couple weeks ago. They don't do a hang tag, but they have a number of different like stickers that they use to put their packaging together. And so they have to there's a bottom box, and then they put 4 truffles inside the box, and then they have to put the top on, and then they put a sticker around it, and the sticker goes and is their closure. So that's what goes all the way around the bottom side. And she said, it doesn't make sense for me to sell this package at retail because it takes me so long to package it. Whereas if you think about if she put that in a clear box where all she had to do was close the top and, put a different kind of closure there, would that save her 10 seconds on each box? And when she's packaging 200 boxes, that makes a big difference. So to answer your question, if you have the time and the ability to add something like that to your package and it's adding value to the consumer, on shelf, then I don't think it hurts. But I think that it's something to consider as you scale, that should I apply this hang tag information in a different way, right? As opposed to a hang tag that's going to take you significantly longer to apply in the grand scheme of things, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Great, you're welcome. And Amanda made a great point in the comments too here in the chat that as a customer, she would definitely scan a QR code for recipes on packaging, and agrees that it's definitely worth including. She said that they're often used in the marketing for Lake George Regional Chamber of Commerce to direct people to specific landing pages. So that's great advice on that side too. And also when it comes to the sell sheet that you're using with your retailer, showing QR codes like that to say, I've got recipes, and if you want to learn more about them, here's where you can get directly to them on our website, is also another great usage of that QR code. The retailer might not go that far, but it does tell them you've got recipes, right? Without getting into the weeds of we've got recipes on our website. It kind of invites them to take one step further if they want to. And you're kind of helping them make something as easy as possible without taking up a bunch of space on your sell sheet with the actual recipes, right? It's like it strikes a nice balance. So in terms of key takeaways for today, I would say think about ways that you can scale up your offerings for your products, whether it's through collaborations with other partners or adding a different flavor to the kind of products that you're producing. Try to be nimble as much as possible. So can you do a small test run and be the person serving it to customers for the first time so that you can get their feedback? 3, make sure that when you are giving tests, trying to get that feedback from your customer, taste testing, something where you're doing something really in depth, especially for your core product, make sure that you are either able to accept that feedback neutrally or try and get somebody else to do that for you so that that feedback can be received in a neutral way that's going to help you be able to grow and improve over time. Nobody wants to hurt your feelings, but that feedback is really important. If you are going to niche down, I couldn't recommend it more highly. But just think about that whole concept of a 3-legged stool so that if you're going to do, to expand your line of products, find a way to make them related in some way. And if they're a little bit further removed, and Kristen, it's pork and caramel, so I'm going to use you as the example, but the thread is that they're all made on your farm, which makes sense because your company name is Ardent Homesteader, right? So when you're creating those 3 legs to your stool, find your thread that unites them so that when you're presenting your business to your customer or your retailer, that there is, you know, a line of cohesion there that can be understood. And I guess the other thing I would say too is keep in mind those motivating factors that are going to compel a consumer to buy, because you can use that in that's that taste, convenience, healthfulness list that I gave from the report, that when you share that information with the retailer as well, it gives them confidence that you're paying attention to those things. And really, ultimately, their goal is to buy products that are going to resonate with that end consumer as well. So sharing that you're thinking about those things is also a benefit. I hope that was helpful. Reach out to me anytime if I can help answer additional questions. We're 29designstudio.com. I'll put that in the chat if you have anything to follow up with. LinkedIn is the best place to keep in touch with me and my future speaking engagements and work that we're doing and all sorts of those things. So I invite you to follow me on LinkedIn as well. And thanks everybody for your time today.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
doing
Thank you
this.
so much, Maureen.
Thanks, Maureen.
Pleasure.
I hope everyone enjoyed the sessions today, and these are being recorded, so we'll have them available to share with you and then also with other producers around the state through Taste New York. We are holding our in-person Taste New York Producer Showcase on September 22nd at SUNY Adirondack. And I believe Maureen will be presenting there as well on the packaging topic that we originally talked about. And so I look forward to that. And I also look forward to reading the report and sharing that with all of you as well.
Yes, great.
Thank
Thanks,
you
everybody.
so much for putting this on.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.